What grade would you give Josh Heupel after 3 years on the job at Tennessee? Is it an A plus? Is it a C minus? Probably somewhere in between. A lot of things to celebrate, some things to improve on. A year 3 look at Josh Heupel here today on a Monday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Vols. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I'm Eric Kane. If you're watching on YouTube, you know I'm joined today by my friend Jase Thomas. He is the host of the Jase Thomas Podcast. Jase, what's up, man? I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, man. This is first time here on the Locked On Vols. I'm an avid daily listener, so I'm glad to be able to listen here. But I will say it's gonna be weird. I mean, if I'm gonna have to skip next Monday or when this is going up, because I don't know if I'm gonna listen to myself for 30 minutes next week, Eric. But I hope it's a good one.
It's like I want to do air checks a lot of the time so that I can. It's like watching film, perfect your craft. But it is weird listening to yourself do a podcast, I will admit. As Shade's kind of alluded to, this is pre-recorded in advance. I am on vacation out of the country this week, so going to be joined by a lot of guests this week, but Chase is first up. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about Josh Heupel, kind of a report card after 3 seasons on the helm, college football, where we are right now and what we would change, and then some expectations for Tennessee basketball and Tennessee baseball moving forward. Chase, let me just make it open-ended, man. How would you assess Josh Heupel's performance so far through 3 seasons at Tennessee?
I think by and large it's like a B plus, right? Maybe 2022 made you think it was going to be like an A minus, a solid A to where this Tennessee football team was going, but I think this past year was just pretty rocky. I think by and large, it could be way worse. You can look around the SEC and look around a lot of college football. A lot of college football fans would kill to be in the situation that Tennessee has been in and to have the kind of success that Josh Heupel has had at Tennessee over the first 3 years. But I think B plus just feels the best to me, just because, look, I mean, they haven't gotten to Atlanta, so that's something that you still want to get to at some point to really get in that A zone where you just feel like you're in that top tier where you've seen Tennessee be in the past. I think recruiting is probably, you look at it, probably a solid B plus to this point in the Heupel tenure. I think you look at quarterback play. I mean, something that the biggest what if, I think, in the Heupel era to this point is like, what if Joe doesn't get hurt in 2021 and how different we're talking about Tennessee's rise and Tennessee's last 2.5 years. I was thinking about that a little bit this offseason because he did pick Joe. Like, Joe was his transfer guy years ago now, and Hendon Hooker was a Jeremy Pruitt jump in at the last minute, and he steps in and the rest is history. But I just look at it, there's just so many different interesting things and interesting paths that Tennessee could have gone on over the last 3 years that I think there's always room for improvement. I think Tennessee, this is a big year. Year 4 and year 5 are going to be huge for Josh Heupel's longevity here in Knoxville. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. But you get the number 1 quarterback in the class last year. You got to love that. You saw how he performed in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa, and a lot of reason for optimism there. You have a strong identity, and that's a big part of what makes Tennessee football fun right now, is you know what you're going to get week over week. You know you're going to run the ball really well. It doesn't seem to matter who's in the backfield or who's banged up on the offensive line. They're going to find success there, and there's still, I think he raised the floor at Tennessee more than anything. I still have questions about the ceiling for the Heupel era at Tennessee, but I think the floor is undeniable, which is 8 to 9 wins every year with this kind of offense, and just the way he's recruited and just kind of what kind of coach he is. So by and large, I think B plus, solid, and just kind of navigating what was a pretty terrible situation with so many transfers, what he walked into. I think to have the nitpicks that we have with the Heupel administration, I think that's still a great spot to be in if you're a Tennessee fan.
Yeah, you kind of brought it up there, like, no doubt. I mean, has it been perfect? Absolutely not. Even when Tennessee won 10 regular season games, you had that embarrassment at South Carolina. I mean, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I just think it's wild. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, and but really, if we kind of get lost in it. You just said it a moment ago, man. We sit here, we nitpick. We're sitting here, we're nitpicking recruiting classes. We're sitting here, we're nitpicking a secondary. that's only gotten better every single year under Tim Banks. We're sitting here nitpicking quarterback play where you had a quarterback in Joe Milton that went for over 3,000 combined yards. That's only happened a couple of times in Tennessee history. Whereas for 15 years, for by and large, outside of a couple of seasons, it's been really bad here in terms of quarterback play. It's been really bad overall team success. And as you mentioned again, you came in, Josh Heupel takes the job, 30 players in the transfer portal, NCAA cloud, just kind of, right over the program. There were so many uncertainties. And then you flash forward 3 years later, you have a 10-win regular season. You have an 8-win regular season. You've won the Citrus Bowl. You've won the Orange Bowl. You had a Biletnikoff Award winner. You should have had a Heisman finalist. It's just still kind of wild to sit here and think about how far this program has come in 3 seasons.
No, I mean, it has. And I think that's why Heupel deserves a lot of grace here, is that when you raise the floor and you take the kind of job that Tennessee was when he took over, look, I mean, like I said, the next 2 years are huge for what Heupel's future looks like in Knoxville. Like, I think he really needs Nico to work because of how frustrating I think this season was. And look, and I told Tennessee fans this, where it's like, you and I interact with a lot of Tennessee fans on our shows and in real life here in Knoxville. But I mean, I think 2022 spoiled fans so much that I think they thought that was going to be the norm. It's like, hey, yeah, it doesn't matter who's under center. It doesn't matter who's at wide receiver. We have, because I mean, you were a top 10 offense in 2021 in scoring. Tennessee was the only team in the top 10 in points per game in the Power 5 who didn't win 10 games in 2021. That was part of the reason I picked Tennessee to go 10-2 going into 2022. I was like, I just think the offense is going to be better. I just could not say enough positive things about how much I loved Hendon Hooker and what he meant for this team. But like, I think it just spoiled folks. And this year was like just a very uncomfortable dose of reality of like, when you don't have 2 NFL wide receivers, when you don't have an NFL quarterback and Heisman favorite, or shouldn't you, Heisman finalist favorite under center, that like, hey, it doesn't matter how good of an offensive mind Josh Heupel is, like, it's really hard to win in this league, and it's really hard to replicate that level of success and just making SEC defenses look foolish week over week. It's just hard.
Yeah, it is hard, and I'll be super intrigued to kind of see where Tennessee goes in 24 and 25, as you mentioned, kind of, how this whole program continues to evolve and where we are in college football with the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. We're going to get into that here in a moment in segment 2, but kind of on that note, year 4 is a big year. You don't have to break it down from every single angle, but here on January, whatever it is, knowing we have a full offseason ahead of us, kind of what are your expectations in 24? Kind of where do you see this team being? You saw one game with Nico. Obviously, it was a good one, but it was just one game. What do you think Tennessee can accomplish next fall in year 4 for Heupel?
I think it's interesting to see how high Nico's Heisman odds are out of the gate here, which should make Tennessee fans feel good. There's a lot of hype there, and I mean, the fact that you just feel better just seeing a full game of Nico in the Citrus Bowl is just kind of calming, where it just seems like he's got a high floor too, where it's just, I don't see a lot of bust potential here. Like, I don't see what we saw last year would be a surprise, where Joe Milton has a really good Orange Bowl and then the rest of the season is just kind of a struggle in 2023. I don't foresee a similar situation for Nico next year, but I will caution folks, and I was actually talking to a buddy about this last week, and just kind of pumping the brakes a little bit, where I'm like, I think the goal is the playoff. Like, the goal should be, but that's going to be hard to do, because I mean, Ole Miss is right there. You look at the SEC and who's coming into this conference, like, there's still a lot of guaranteed spots for other conferences. There's still a G5 guaranteed spot. Even if you go 10-2 like you did 2 years ago, that might not be enough. You might be 10-2. Ole Miss might be 10-2, and there might be one other SEC team that's 10-2, and you might not get in there. So there's no guarantee. I think this year you just want to be in the conversation in late November that's a possibility. And if you're in that spot where last year, I think, what were they favored? And ended up being 10 games of the 12 that Tennessee played. Mm-hmm. In a down year, you were favored in 10 to 12 games. Like, that's a great spot to be in if you're 10. Those are the little things that Tennessee fans can overlook, where I'm like, yeah, the Florida debacle was rough, but look, man, like, that's really good. That's a really good spot to be in, where I think this upcoming year, they'll end up being probably favored in 9 or 10 of their games. The schedule is really nice. You get Bama at home again this year, yeah, at Georgia, but it's like I'd honestly rather go to Georgia. Just don't worry about it. Don't just try and tuck yourself into the home win streak from Tennessee, which is another big part of it, which is Heupel has made winning at Neyland extremely, extremely difficult for opposing teams. And when you have that kind of home field advantage and you feel good about what Heupel's teams are going to do at home, it just kind of raised the floor. So I think for Tennessee fans to be happy, I think you want to hit that 9-win number for year one of Nico. But I don't think they're a national title contender going next year. I think they should be in the blue chip ratio going into next year if I'm based on what's coming in, and that's huge, just being in that top 15 range in talent accumulation. But I think 2025 is what I have circled. I think you need to go all in. That needs to be very heavy planned for the portal. We obviously have GMAC and company, hopefully a wave of 5 stars there, so you have momentum on that front, hopefully. And then I think that's where you put all your eggs in that basket, because you saw the year 2 bump with Hendon Hooker with 2 years in this offense. I think Nico, you get 3 years of this of him in this offense with the kind of talent, Mike Matthews being a sophomore, Braylon Staley being a sophomore. Some of these guys, it just, to me, 2025 is the year that you put all your chips in and you spend the money and you just, you go all out. But then the other side, Eric, I don't know if you agree here, what concerns me is like you lose so much on the offensive line. There's no way around it after 2024 that I'm like, I don't know. I'm back and forth on this.
It's college football, man. I mean, it's ever changing. It's always evolving. That's college sports. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, you brought it up there at the end, but like for me, I hear you, year 2 in the system. You're still going to have plenty of weapons. Your tight ends will be back. Probably still going to have, you should still have Chris Brazzell and Squirrel White and a lot of these weapons, but the offensive line, gone. The defensive line, gone. At least defensively, there's a rotation. You know some of those young guys, they've done some things. You know what you're going to have, at least in certain spots. Now, defensive tackle is another story, but offensive line-wise, you have no clue at this point in time. So that's why it's a huge offseason coming up. And, of course, maybe some of those guys can break through and play in 2024. We're going to have more with Chase Thomas when we come back here as we continue on with Locked On Vols. Going to have a fun show coming up. We're going to talk college football, where we are now, and if we can change one thing, what would it be? That coming up next right here with Chase Thomas on Locked On Vols. All right, friends, let me tell you about FanDuel. NFL regular season, it's over. Wildcard weekend just happened. The NFL playoffs are continuing to roll on, and you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. So many fun things you can do on the safe, secure, easy-to-use FanDuel Sports app. Live same-game parlays. You can find new bets in the new Explore tab. You can make Parlay and Parlay Hub the best way to find popular parlays, spreads, totals, prop bets, all that and more. Plus, college basketball is happening right now. NBA is happening right now. You can cross-pick all those parlays and have some fun over at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook, it is America's #1 sportsbook. Again, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. All that and more at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. More to come here on Locked On Vols. All right, welcome back into Locked On Vols here on a Monday morning. I'm Eric Kane, Chase Thomas of the Chase Thomas Podcast, joining me here today. Chase, go ahead and tell me about your show. Tell the listeners of Locked On Vols if they're unfamiliar with your work, where they can catch you. Man, I think I podcast a lot. You probably do double my take on a weekly basis. Tell us where we can listen to your work.
I don't know. You and I are both probably here in the Knoxville. We're both Knoxville locals. I think we're probably we put out the most amount of content between the two of us of anyone in the area, between VolQuest, Locked On, and the Chase Thomas podcast. But it's a daily national sports show here in Knoxville, Tennessee, to talk NFL, NBA, college football, Tennessee Vols. So I got Ryan Shumpert of Rocky Top Insider. I've got Ethan Steph Saturday Down South, and I've got Jack Foster of Always College Football on every Sunday night, talking all things Tennessee. Of course, got all the VolQuest guys, yourself included, during the week, and a lot of big guests on that front. And then like I had Xavier Scruggs, who of ESPN this this past week talking Major League Baseball a little bit. I've had Jay Billis on. I've had a lot of college football coaches, basketball coaches. I talked to everybody. There's a reason that the Sports Renaissance Man was someone wrote that review in my show a couple of years ago, and it just was something that kind of stuck just because I talk a lot about a lot of different things, and I like knowing a lot about a little thing. So it's kind of cool as you get older. You're just like, I like being able to talk to experts like yourself every day because I learn something new. And I think if you're a sports fan looking for smart national sports content and sports podcasting where you learn something and it's just somebody new each and every day, then the Chase Thomas podcast might be for you.
Yeah, check it out. He does a fantastic job. And again, Locked On Vols, Locked On SEC, go give the Chase Thomas podcast a listen. Like I joke with some of my friends that, might be, fans of other SEC teams, and they'll talk to me about recruiting. And I'm like, they'll say, what do you think about this guy? And I'm like, who is that? If Tennessee's not recruiting him, I have no clue. Like, my mind is so narrow focused on everything Tennessee because that's my life. When I worked in sports radio, I had to talk a little bit about everything. And of course, I'm still a sports fan. I watch NFL. I watch college football games, But my biggest compliment to you would probably just be the range. You and I will talk Tennessee football, and then the next day I'll see you interview somebody about the Sacramento Kings. It's like, what is going on here? But you do a great job, man, and it's always a really, really good listen. Do want to ask you about college football, kind of where we are right now. I love it. There's a lot that I don't like, but overall, still love it, right? Ratings don't lie. Everybody still seems to love college football. What do you think about college football right now? I mean, there's a lot of things that are different and have been different in the last couple of years that just happened back to back to back. A lot of people think college football is broke. A lot of people think college football is not sustainable with this model. Got news for those people. It is. But what do you think about college football right now, kind of where we are?
It's one of those things. I think Josh Pate of Late Kick has a really good take on this, which is that, like, do you notice on Saturdays that it's changed? Like, when you're inside Neyland, does it feel different? And it doesn't. Like, I go to a lot of Tennessee sporting events and as an alum and all that, and I love going inside. That's part of the reason I don't think I ever want to be like a beat writer or analyst for Tennessee. Is like I need to be able to scream inside Neyland. I like being among the people and being able to go with my dad and friends and stuff like that. It's just more my deal. But it's just one of those, I just think it's going to work itself out because there's so much money in this sport, and because like Tennessee is, they're not building their own version of the Atlanta Braves battery on the Tennessee River with worry about where college football is going. Yeah. They're doing it because they know college football is going to be around. They know that Tennessee football is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger over the next couple of years. There's going to be more money pouring in. There's going to be more interest. You're seeing ratings go up this year. I think what's going to change is, like, we can say that because we cover a team that's not going to be left behind. Where it changes is, like, if you're an Oregon State fan, like, it genuinely sucks. Like, you're now out of the big game. Like, you are now gone to the Mountain West. Like, you are left behind. If you're a Wazoo fan, you're left behind. You can't win a title anymore. You're out of that kind of the big boy ball. And I think that kind of split is coming. So I don't really worry about that though, because the games are so good. Like, was anyone complaining about the semifinal games last week? Those were fantastic. Like, we're recording this right before the national title game tonight. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think there's all kinds of interesting elements. Like, it's the best scoring defense in college football versus the best scoring offense. Like, two undefeated teams. Like, it's going to be great. Like, we're not going to complain about the actual game itself. Now, is the opinion of someone inside, like, you're more on the inside with Tennessee coaches and stuff like that. I'm sure it sucks for a lot of these coaches on a daily basis. I'm sure the new rule where transfers can happen at any given moment and you can transfer multiple times, like, it's driving them up the wall. But do I also think that was a crazy rule to begin with? Because guess who? I transferred when I was in college. Like, this was something, like, the fact that they got away with it for this long is kind of amazing. Because it's like, if you are not an employee and you are a student, like, I don't know how you were ever able to limit how many times a guy could transfer. If you are a student athlete, you should have been able to transfer as many times as a normal student wants to transfer. Like, it will be harder for you to graduate. It will take a lot longer with credits and all that. But technically, you should be able to do it. So I've always been on the side of players on that regard. But I also think here's a quick fix. I'm kind of okay with it going down this road because it forces these departments and these universities to have to address this problem. because these coaches can't put up with much more. So I kind of want this to continue to get more untenable behind the scenes so that actual change comes about, because they were just kind of putting all these band-aids on where college football was going over the last 10 to 15 years, knowing good and well where this was going to end up going. So I just don't worry about it. I think eventually maybe there'll be employees, maybe the TV networks pay players and that's just part of the deal. And there's some sort of CBA that restricts them from being able to transfer multiple times. You have to give money back to the university if you transfer or whatever. Something's coming down the line. Like, it's not sustainable. This isn't going to continue. But the one thing I do worry about is, like, before they get to that point, what if you lose a lot of good coaches? What if you lose a lot of fans who, I think right now, because you and I are so locked in, you like the pun there, locked in on college football every day, it's easy for us to keep up with it. Like, it's fun. We need to. It's also for our jobs to keep up with where Chris Brazzell is coming and, like, what's going on with Hurd. And, like, we can talk, like, there's not many of us who's talking about, like, wait, so he has a kid in Texas and that's why he's like, that's just really, you're really in the weeds at that point. That's not what the average casual fan's keeping up with. And I just think it's really, really hard for casual college football fans to still exist, because so many guys are moving around, because it's changing so much. Coaching movement, this, that, and the other. I mean, Mizzou's DC moves right after an early national signing day, and he's now the highest paid assistant at LSU. It's just really hard and complicated. So I do wonder in the next couple of years if that has any effect on fan interest. It's just that kind of movement and how difficult it is for the casual fan to keep up with this sport.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, a couple of good points about, when you go to Thompson Bowling Arena, what's the change outside of some Food City signage, right? When you go to Neyland Stadium, the pageantry is still there, the ball walk's still there. I mean, the circle drill's still there. I mean, it's all still there. So if you're a casual fan, at least game day experiences aren't changing much. As far as coaches, I think you're going to lose more and more coaches of the NFL. I truly do, because I understand Josh Heupel makes $9 million, but my gosh, man, I'm around, covering those camps in June, and you see members of his staff and him included. They're just like, it looks like they haven't slept in a month. It's just like, because they're constantly, working these day camps, official visitors of the weekend, workouts with the team and all that. It's wild. There's so much going on right now, and as far as employees, I actually wrote one of my, like, senior essays in college when I was at Carson Newman, D2. So it's very different, but you still go through and you're still doing film and training and all that type of stuff too, if you're a student athlete. And I made the case in one of my speeches that student athletes should be paid. And so I feel like somewhere down the line, again, I'm not smart enough to make this declaration or anything, but I think somewhere down the line, you will see student athletes be employees of the university, because you're putting in, the minimum hours, 20, whatever. Like, you're putting in way more hours than that. You are bringing in so much money to that said university. Whereas I still think the players can earn more off their name, image, and likeness, because I think that's still apparent. So I don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years, but there's a lot of things that I would change, but overall it's still a beautiful product that I can't get enough of. One thing I would change, you mentioned kind of something that you changed there, but one thing I would change, and I say this a lot on the show, the month of December is so wild because you have, finals you're finishing up, conference championships, learning out where you're going bowling, transfer portal, players leaving, players coming in, trying to finish off the signing class. And right now you're dealing with COVID seniors making that decision. That will only happen one more cycle, and thankfully that's over. For me, I would move signing day. I would put it back in February, or honestly what I would do is I'd make it August the 1st. And if you sign with a team and their coach gets fired, then you can go back and sign somewhere else. That's what I would do. Do you have any suggestions on something you would change kind of like that would kind of change the football calendar from year around?
I think they're kind of screwed in some ways, just with the calendar, and because they're students. Like, that's part of it, is like, because they're student athletes, they have to be enrolled, and you have just deadlines that just aren't going anywhere. Like, they're going to have to be registered for the next semester, and we've seen how the spring semester transfers, generally speaking, don't translate right away at their next stop. Peyton Thorne, obviously the big recent example, going from Michigan State to Auburn, but I would do that. I love the idea of moving early National Signing Day to August. and then allowing for those late bloomers like the Arian Carters for those December days, and that's it. And then you wrap that up. But I also just kind of wonder what does really worry me is the playoff expansion during the transfer portal hysteria.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work because you're just the Malik Murphy types. Like, you're just going to have those pop up, not because any fault of the kid. It's just the calendar is what it is. And I don't know how that's going to work. Like, that is going to be very fascinating to me over the next couple of years, is how those players navigate that. Is there a rule put in place where, hey man, sorry, if you're a playoff team, you can enter the portal later? Maybe you put a rule in there where they get a special waiver to enter the portal after the deadline, once their season concludes. Maybe that's what you do. But I'm very curious how that works, because it's more games, more work on your body, and I don't know. That kind of concerns me over the next couple of years.
So while it's on, man, you're seeing opt-outs in bowl games. It's only going to get even more interesting to see who may elect to opt out of a college football playoff. Because, again, got a backup quarterback. Maybe you want to go see if there's greener pasture somewhere else, but you're the backup quarterback on a team that could win a national championship. Those are decisions we just kind of spoke on. And so I too am going to be intrigued to see kind of how that, works out over the next couple of years. Hey, when we come back, a brief segment, we're going to talk about Tennessee basketball. We're going to talk about Tennessee baseball, some expectations for the coming year. All that and more is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. I know we come to this for a sports escape. We talk about Tennessee Volunteers. We have a great time doing it, but let's get real for just a moment. Let's talk about life, all right? According to the FDA, pharmacies running out of antibiotics right in the middle of what many consider the worst flu season in over a decade. That's pretty scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than, if I had a child, or maybe my spouse or your child, whatever the case may be. Maybe they're suffering from an illness, and because of supply chain issues, they're kept from getting that medicine that they need, maybe potentially even to save their life at that moment in time. Thanks to Jase Medical, you could be prepared. It's an option for you. It's an option for me. The Jase case got a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat long lists of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. Things that can happen to you, things that can happen to me daily. Visit jasemedical.com if you want to check out this option, if you want to explore this option, to get a complete physician encounter. It's going to be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at only a fraction of the cost. It's never been more important now to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Again, jasemedical.com, promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. All that and more at jasemedical.com. All right, want to welcome you back in here to a Monday edition of Locked On Vols with my buddy Chase Thomas. Check out his podcast, the Chase Thomas Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Do want to ask you kind of out the door here, expectations for Tennessee basketball. Obviously, there's some games at the time of this recording that will have been played by the time this airs. That's the fun of pre-recording. But overall, start of SEC play got off to a really good start with Ole Miss. It's kind of that beat down. A lot of people are saying this is Rick Barnes' deepest team, especially here at Tennessee. What needs to happen for Tennessee to maybe have that magical season? We know it's all about where you are in March. I get that. But when you look at the depth of this basketball team, truly, it does seem kind of special, especially if Zakai Zeeler continues his way, Dalton Knecht gets back to where he was at the beginning of the year, Jonas Adu keeps it up. What are your thoughts on Tennessee basketball right now?
It's funny you say that Knecht thing. I think he's the most fascinating here because Jemai Mashak closes for Rick Barnes on Saturday night, and I've always been a huge Jemai guy. Like, I love Jemai Mashak. He's only gotten better. I love his defense. I love what he's able to do. Defending guys 1 through 5, and just he obviously had the 2 threes, that big 3 right at the buzzer, going into the half, giving Tennessee all kinds of momentum. Knecht just hasn't really been right, and we've seen the best of him, which was North Carolina. Maybe that's just not sustainable and not something you're going to see very often. Maybe he's just going to be hit or miss, and like one of the things I've circled is Vescovi is just he's having one of his worst years at Tennessee to this point. He hasn't gotten into rhythm, and we know how it was a little bit tough circumstances coming into this year, so give him a little bit more time. But we are here in mid-January. So I'm curious what that looks like, because Kai Ziegler, Jonas Adu, and Josiah Jordan-James have been your 3 best players consistently this year. And Jonas Adu obviously making a huge jump this season, and he really dominated Ole Miss on Saturday night. And I mean, Triple J is just a more complete player. He looks like an NBA player on this Tennessee team, and I just can't say enough good things about him, because I think he's been the most important. And he's probably the one you can't lose the most of anybody, like, because health has been obviously a good part of where Tennessee's at outside of Dalton Connect early. You got to keep Josiah Jordan-James, especially with Chris Ledlum obviously not in the fold. Like, you're just really thin. You would have to turn to like a Cade Phillips, or maybe go super small with Meshack or Connect at the 4. Like, Josiah Jordan-James needs to stay healthy, because that has been tough for him at Tennessee over the last couple of years. So that's something I have circled of, like, if he's healthy, this is a different kind of team. And I still don't know who their best 5 is to this point, but you have time. And I think that we talked about Heupel and the floor raising. I think the floor is just so high with Rick Barnes and what he's built here. But I also just like winning the tournament so hard. Like, it's a 1-game elimination. You can have one bad shooting day and it's over. So I'm optimistic about where this team's going. I think them and Auburn are probably my 2 best teams in the SEC right now. Kentucky, we'll see what that looks like. I mean, they were in a dogfight with Florida on Saturday, and I don't think Florida's all that great this year. So we'll see where they ultimately are. I think Tennessee, obviously the Bruce Pearl factor, Tennessee-Auburn will always be a lot of fun. I think that it's going to come down to those 2 in the SEC, but I think it's just a little bit different. I mean, you cover a lot of Tennessee baseball. You and I spend a lot of time with Tennessee baseball. I tell folks here in Knoxville, tell family, in terms of emotional investment, I mean, Tennessee baseball is where you want to be in terms of thinking titles and things like that. I'm counting down the days here, Eric Kane, to Tennessee baseball, freezing my tail off inside Lindsey Nelson in a month, because I can't wait. Like, Tennessee basketball is just nice. It's a nice little in between for me, football and baseball. But if I'm being completely honest, all my eggs are emotionally are in the Tennessee baseball basket these days.
Mid-40s sleet
at
Lindsey Nelson Stadium on
Can't
a
wait.
Tuesday afternoon against Alabama A&M coming your way in February.
The Xander Bowl. Like, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for some Xander. I miss Xander in my life. I need him back on my Tuesday nights.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're gonna end this, man. And I can't wait, because once I get back from vacation, that's why I scheduled my honeymoon this time last year, and that's why I kind of scheduled this trip with my wife this time this year, because when I come back, man, it's full-fledged preseason baseball, and then if all goes well, you're busy through the end of June, and so I can't wait to dive into it. So much excitement with Tennessee baseball, a lot of questions. Okay, for the first time really in 2 seasons, you go from having 4 guys who could be in your weekend rotation to trying to find a third. And most college programs are in this boat. It's very abnormal to have 3, much less 4 guys that you can throw out there on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and feel good about. Tennessee's been there the last couple of years, but got to find a third starter. What roles in the bullpen kind of shake out. But, man, that lineup is going to be great. Billy Amick, Cannon Peebles, Dalton Bargo coming on, Christian Moore, Blake Burke. I'm super excited.
Don't leave out my guy, Dylan Dreiling. Dreiling, we're ready for the Dreiling era.
Yeah, Dreiling era is here. He's going to be an everyday starter in the outfield unless something drastic happens. So I'm pumped, man. Again, it's a long season too. Just look last year, they were 5-10. Your boy hits a home run. Tears hits a home run. Merritt follows it a couple innings later with a home run. And the season changes there with that Vanderbilt win. What's your outlook on Tennessee baseball, knowing you got a lot of questions to answer in non-conference play, but how excited, obviously.
All gas, no brakes. Like, I'm all in on the Tony era. Like, it's year to year. I don't know what the future holds for him at Tennessee, and I just think it's a year to year thing on that front. But man, being in there, I was literally just talking to a buddy about this today, was just that, like, you become a different person when you go into Lindsey Nelson as a fan. Like, who you are as a Tennessee sports fan inside Lindsey Nelson for 2 hours is completely different than at any other walk of life, because you just, what their personality is, it takes over the entire crowd, and we all become the worst people on the planet for 2 hours. And it's great. Like, I get to be a completely different person for 2 hours, and it's a hornet's nest. And when it's rocking and you're in standing room only, and there's just like a 5-hour tailgate for Georgia on a Friday afternoon, it's just crazy. Like, it's a totally different vibe. It's really intimate. Everybody cares a whole heck of a lot. And I just think this team's super talented. I think they have a good problem to have, which is they have a lot of talented guys that are jockeying for only a couple of positions, especially in the infield. Because I think the outfield seems like we have a pretty good idea. Dreiling, Hunter, and Reese Chapman, and probably in right, and then Tiers at that DH spot. And we'll see what happens with Zane Denton if he ends up back. But I mean, you're fine even if he's not back. Like Billy, it kind of clears some stuff up, and you have some young guys who, like, maybe that's Antigua, or maybe that's Perry. Is that his last name? Yeah, Perry. Like, there's different guys we're gonna learn, and we're gonna be like, oh. I can't wait for my first. That guy's got a lot of Cortland Lawson in him. Haven't been able to say that. I'm ready to do that. But I also think the biggest question mark for this group is actually not pitching. They're gonna figure it out. There's talented guys, like whether it's Wyatt Evans, Nate Snead, whoever it is, it's fine. The thing that I'm most curious about is if Blake Burke is still the everyday first baseman in May, because it was rough. And you started off in the middle of the order, and you gradually had to move him down to the 7th spot. And it was rough in that 7, 8, 9 for a chunk of the end of last year with him, C. Scott, and Cal Stark. The fact they made it to Omaha with that bottom third of the lineup was just a testament to how good this team was across the board. And I'm not trying to get you in trouble, Eric, but I don't know. I don't think it's a slam dunk that he's like your everyday first baseman anymore. He's got to start hitting curves. He's got to, I hope this was a big offseason for him, because all the power and talent in the world, but that's what I have circled, is like, can he put it all together and be kind of what we saw inklings of 2 years ago?
And he was great in non-conference play last year, and then in SEC play, man, it went down. And experimented him for a game, I believe in South Carolina, hitting leadoff. It was interesting, but Robin Villanueva is a guy that can step in and smash, and I'm intrigued to see exactly kind of what's going to happen. So looking forward to it, man. Chase, thanks so much for joining me here today. We'll have to come back on. We could talk for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Already gone over the time limits here. But again, tell us where they can find you on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify, all those places, so we can listen to the Chase Thomas podcast. Oh, yeah. We're on Apple, Spotify every day. Go check out ChaseThomasPodcast.com, homepage, all kinds of great links and insight into the show, how it all got started, and the daily lineup to look forward to each and every day. Check us out on YouTube as we grow the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast, as we continue to grow that one out. Like and subscribe there, and I'll keep up with all the socials. But that's it. He's Chase Thomas. Give him a follow on Twitter at @PodChaseThomas. Chase, appreciate it, man. Thank you, Eric. All right, that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols here on a Monday. Again, I'm on vacation, so any breaking news, I promise, going to hit it when I get back into the country. But we will have an episode tomorrow, on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday. Got you covered. Just because I'm out of the country, still got you covered for that morning commute. Can't thank you enough. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we will talk to you tomorrow, everybody. This is Locked On Vols.